Program note. This episode of Out There in the Dark was recorded on October 28th, 2024. It is being released now because the creators have been very busy dismantling the deep state and debating which side of the Kendrick-Drake battle they support. They are leaning towards Kendrick. Further, we have made a concerted effort to reduce the amount of pretentiousness by 25% in the third quarter of 2025. The management wishes to apologize to our faithful listeners and assure them that we will have more of Azed and Tom in 2025, prepared to discuss all things cinema on time and on point, even though no one is asking for that.
You see, this is my life. It always will be. There's nothing else. Just us. And the cameras. And those wonderful people out there in the dark.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Out There in the Dark. My name is Tom Alexander, and I'm here with my co-host. Do you remember your name?
I hate saying my name.
Azed Majid.
It's Azed Majid. I have a middle name, by the way.
Well, that's not relevant right now.
Yeah. We have today's episode is going to be Foleyed. The sound is going to be Foleyed. Do you know what Foleyed means? Yes.
Yes.
By my son Django, who's sitting with us and eating.
So adding to the texture.
You're going to say hello? Say hello. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
The sonic texture is complete.
And it's So how are things with you, Tom?
Oh, pretty good, AZ. Pretty good. Yeah. Well, today
I don't believe you don't sound convincing at all. Seriously, you know what? We can turn this off. We can talk if you want. I'm here for you, Tom.
Thank you. We'll do our therapy session later.
Okay.
But for now, today is October 30th. It's the day before Halloween. So very exciting.
Love this time of year.
Yeah, me too. As if you've been listening for a while, you know that I'm a bit of a horror movie buff, and so leading up to Halloween is a lot of fun. Sort of watching all the cool, creepy movies.
But you watch horror movies all the time.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. 12 months of the year.
Yeah,
that's true.
There's something wrong with you, I think.
Well, there's so many things.
I think. Well, but this one, we need to kind of unpack. Yeah. It is a very cool time. I love this time. I've always loved this time of year. It just immediately has a Halloween quality to it, right? Like the way everything's dying around you.
And this time of year here in Toronto, it's the weather's perfect. It's a little bit warm and lots of leaves falling. It's
thank you, global warming.
Upside to everything. So today we're going to talk about a genre of horror that, still resonates with us, I think, today in lots of different influences, but it's the Giallo from Italy, sort of the Italian horror films extending from about the mid-'60s to the early '80s.
Right.
Typified by filmmakers like Lucio Fulci, Dario Argento, Mario Bava, and many others.
Right.
First, though, we did suffer a loss lately.
Somebody
recently.
that we both love.
Love her, Terri Garr.
Yeah. It just, I don't know. When certain people pass, it just sort of takes a little bit of good out of the world or something.
This one kind of hurt.
Yeah, it hurts a little bit. Because we were both saying earlier, we both had a bit of a crush on her. When she was younger.
Oh, with Young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein and, Close Encounters and Mr. Mom.
Right.
And she was in that Coppola movie, One from the Heart.
Right.
And, of course, Tootsie, she was nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah.
But she was just one of those, of course, After Hours, her best performance, probably. She's also in Ghost World. She's really funny in Ghost World. She's the...
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Bob Balaban's second, wife that, he gets back together with her. But she was always, first of all, just hilarious, right? And smart. She always seemed kind of, clever, neurotic, adorable... And, just always one of those actors I was always kind of excited to see her.
She always had this ebullient kind of excitement to her.
joyfulness or
Joy-
something.
yeah.
Like but she wasn't like, Kamala here. I'm not saying like joyfulness, it's like, it's not that. It's like she was like Madeline Kahn in that sense. She was like a great comedian, right? Like, and now they're both gone. Terrible.
Yeah.
Both of those women from Young Frankenstein.
That's true.
Well. Anyway, it was sad to see her go. She's just one of those. You don't really see that many, like those kind of. We should do a whole show on this. To be honest, like female comedians from like
That sort of 60s,
60s
to
into
80s.
70s. Yeah, because they were so many really funny ones. And
Louise Lasser.
Oh yeah, Louise Lasser is great.
We've talked
Diane
about
Keaton, of course.
We've talked about Mary Steenburgen before.
Mary Steenburgen, yeah. Of course, Madeline Kahn, Terri Garr. Who else? Lots. Like, and the thing is, Carol Burnett was,
of course.
And so I'm saying, like, there was a lot, like, there's always this, like, idea that, like, oh, there weren't that many funny women, it's all men, it's not, it was never true.
No.
Like, since I was a kid, there was always women in comedy. I'm not saying they didn't get a bum rap, right? But it's time to kind of reappreciate them, I think, right? So,
No, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
We should totally do that.
do it. Do it for the women.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, should we just move on to Giallo now? Okay, so I'm going to just say, I'll just say right away, like, I had never seen any of these movies before. I, of course, had heard about, like, Dario Argento, and I'd heard of Suspiria and Deep Red, but I'd never had a chance to see them. So this is my first time watching them. And and they're very addictive, Like I started with Suspiria, which I really, really liked. I thought it was way better than I thought it was going to be, right? And we'll talk about why, because I can also understand people not liking a movie like Suspiria because it may seem like completely like, what's the point and what's going on here, and it's whatever. But we'll get to that. There's part of the whole Giallo thing, right? But then I just went nuts and watched a whole bunch. I watched like 5 or 6 in a row, right? And they're so fun to watch, They're not gross like Saw movies or something like that.
Yeah, they're not torture porn.
Yeah.
They're not...
so they're not like repulsive. But they're
gratuitous to a degree.
They're definitely gratuitous. Well, gratuitous is also one of those things where it's like, okay, we'll have to talk about whether or not the violence is gratuitous or not.
Sure.
Okay, but yeah, I'm just saying, like, I'm a big fan now. Like, I've really, really got hooked on them, and so I'm watching everything now because Criterion has a whole series of them right now.
Yeah, that's where I watched a bunch.
Yeah, and and I think what's interesting is it was like a genre that kind of started in the '60s, early '60s with Bava. And especially with that Blood and Black Lace, right?
Yeah, great movie.
Great, I love that one. And then it kind of was popular into the '70s, and then it kind of died in the '80s, and it never really came back, right? Now I think some
the
filmmakers,
echoes are there.
The echoes are completely there. Like, I'd be surprised. I would love to hear like Brian De Palma talk about if he was influenced by any of these.
Tenebrae. Oh, we were talking about this earlier. The scene where the cop at the end bends down,
right,
and then the killer is behind him, and he didn't see him. That's right out of Raising Cain.
Oh, okay.
John Lithgow.
Right, but I wonder with even earlier stuff because if you look at something like Sisters or even Phantom of the Paradise, which
it's a masterpiece.
Is a masterpiece, yes, especially in Winnipeg.
Yeah,
they're huge.
There.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They have the big Phantom of the Paradise festival every year.
Wow.
Yeah. And apparently Paul Williams went to the last one or something.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was the #1 market for the film in North America.
I know, which is amazing. I love that. So that's my take on Giallo. My first impressions were that they're really, really. Some of them are actually quite brilliant.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Should we talk about sort of what Giallo is for those?
Let's talk about it.
The genre came out of a series of pulp fiction mysteries that were published in Italy that tended to have a yellow cover, hence the Giallo, Italian for yellow,
Yes.
name of the genre.
Giallo means yellow, and yeah, it was, and apparently that was like a very famous thing in Europe, even in other parts of Europe after the Giallo books became so popular. And these were books actually, because this is something that I read somewhere, and it's actually super true, is a lot of these Giallo movies, because they're sort of based on murder mystery type genre, they're very reminiscent of Edgar Allan Poe, and there's some Agatha Christie in there and some like Sherlock Holmes, right? So they're really pulling from that Gothic tradition, right? And then they mix it with a more modern
and some film noir, right?
Oh, definitely.
James
There's some
M.
film
Cain.
noir in there. Yeah, for sure. There's some Hitchcock in there for sure, right? Like there's a lot of play on the whole Psycho thing, the mother-son thing, right? So yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is. It's almost like pulpy murder mysteries, right? With sex and stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll just read. Let me read this. There's a guy made a list. It's in Medium. This guy, Tony Stanger, wrote an article called Defining the Giallo Film. And he says, Giallo are famous for their stylish tropes and motifs, which accompany the telling of the murder mystery. I've concluded that for a film to be gialli, it must comprise of most or all of the following elements. 1, lavish set design with vivid, bold colors and dreamlike, surreal qualities. Exceptional costume design, acts of violence such as murder and therefore blood and gore.
Lots of blood and gore.
Yeah. Well, yeah, some of them. Some of them are really gross. Yeah. Nudity and eroticism, psychosexual desires from the killer and other forms of psychological madness, murder mystery often with someone acting as an amateur detective, red herrings to throw off the protagonists and the audience, beautiful middle-class women who have their lives either interrupted or ended, and a menacing and jarring soundtrack.
Yeah, the soundtrack is a big deal. Like
the ones for Suspiria and Dark Red.
Yeah, by Goblin.
Oh, they're amazing.
They are incredibly amazing. There was like this Goblin was this Italian prog rock kind of outfit, and they started doing some soundtracks. So they did those two, and they also did Dawn of the Dead,
right?
Which is incredible music as well. And then they had split up at some point, and then Argento used the main three of the four guys for the Tenebrae soundtrack, which is also quite good.
Okay, yeah. Well, the soundtracks for all of them are amazing.
Yeah.
And they are very much a character, especially in a movie like Suspiria or Deep Red. There's motifs that keep coming back, and whatever, right?
The sing-song child lullaby.
Yeah, that starts
that's
with
so
that.
scary.
Yeah.
But I would say there's a couple other little elements of Giallo that.
Okay, what did this guy
up.
miss?
Well, I think in a lot of them that I've seen, the killer, you don't know who the killer is. Of course, it's a mystery, but they're also obscured by like a dark hat, a black raincoat or leather jacket, black gloves. And you never know, you don't even know if they're male or female, because that's part of the twist at the end is often the gender. You assume that the killer is a man, is killing all of these women.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't, and sometimes there's more than one killer.
Yeah.
And
sometimes it's confusing even at the end who the killer is.
or who did what.
Yeah,
you have to kind of like really think back.
Yeah.
You need like a psychotype exposition at the end to help explain it.
Right.
Often I find the police who are investigating the murders are incompetent, completely that's buffoonish.
In every one of them.
You know, in Deep Red, the cop is constantly eating while he's like investigating. He's eating a sandwich, or he's like kicking the vending machine because he can't get his Coke. He doesn't care about who's killing who. And the amateur detective, as he mentioned, Tony Stanger mentioned there, is often a foreigner, so he's not Italian.
Right.
So in Deep Red, it's David Hemmings, who's British, or it's an American.
Or it's like John Saxon, or what's the other guy's name?
In Tenebrae, John Saxon is the agent of Tony Francioso.
Tony Francioso, yeah.
We should do a whole episode on John Saxon, by the way. But anyway, that's another...
Original Westworld, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also that person tends to, they're sort of tangentially related to the crime somehow. And they also tend to be an artist of some kind.
Right.
So in Tenebrae, he's a horror novelist.
Right.
In Deep Red, he's a musician and he teaches music.
Right.
In The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, he's an American writer.
Right.
So it's always this outside influence coming in to solve this problem that the Italian patriarchy, the police, cannot deal with.
Right. It's a system. Yeah.
The system doesn't work.
There's a big distrust of authority in all of these movies, right? And oftentimes it's the damaged trauma of this killer's background, that explains why they're that way. And that also indicts the system, right?
I don't remember the details. I haven't seen Blood and Black Lace in quite a while. I haven't seen Bird with the Crystal Plumage in quite a while. That was Argento's first film in 1970 that kind of made Giallo.
Yeah, and who's that actor,
popular.
the American actor?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Bird with the Crystal Plumage kind of really made Giallo, put it on the map, and launched Argento's career. And it's just a visually striking. And talk about music. Ennio Morricone did the music for Bird with the Crystal Plumage.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And the cinematographer was somebody big.
It was
like Storaro or something.
It was Storaro.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
But I think the style of Giallo in cinema goes back farther than the just the novels that came out. I mean, I've seen some older horror films that definitely have Giallo elements. One in particular that reminded me was kind of an obscure film called The Spiral Staircase.
Oh yeah,
by Robert Siodmak.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't seen it, but I've seen it around.
Yeah, a young woman I think she's deaf, is terrorized by an intruder in this mansion that she lives in, and you never know who he is. It's a big mystery, and sometimes you just see his eye poking out from the clothes, which is completely referenced in Deep Red.
Right.
When one of the victims, you see the killer's eye sticking out of the closet.
Well, especially because there's all those, what do you call them? Mannequins.
Yeah.
Those red mannequins.
Yeah, or Suspiria, which is not strictly a Giallo film because it doesn't have much of those tropes, but it is definitely has,
Yeah,
a lot in common.
I think, yes, of course, people are can be like, oh, this just doesn't fit to Giallo, right? But I think, I think there's more. Giallo, I think, is like an art movement, and there are aspects of it that you definitely see how somebody like Bava moves from his first film, which was The Girl Who Knew Too Much, kind of a play on the Hitchcock, right? Mm-hmm. Man Who Knew Too Much, which is. I didn't see the whole thing, but it's a serviceable, like it's well done, and it's eerie and all that stuff. I've never seen it, but it's got none of that, none of the elements. It's much more like a Hitchcock kind of ripoff, right? But with Blood and Black Lace, it's a whole new ball game, right? This is a whole style, and I think. I haven't read this anywhere, but my guess is that Fellini probably played a role in that. Like Fellini's 8.5, and I think Juliet of the Spirits came out around the same time, if not maybe. Yeah. But I think the fact that there was this surrealist kind of this move towards that, like Buñuel was making stuff, and in those days that stuff was still considered, high art. Right? Antonioni, yeah. Like there's this kind of like these movies all take place within, not all of them, but a lot of them take place within female kind of institutions and artistic ones, right? Like in Suspiria, it's a ballet school. It's a very exclusive ballet school, which reminded me a bit of Black Swan. Yeah. There was some aspects that were kind of reminiscent of Black Swan. And then in Deep Red, it's a modeling agency, right?
Oh, in Blood and Black Lace, it's a modeling agency.
Blood and Black Lace, yeah. Interesting. They always use a kind of art, like you said, like writer, musician. There's this high art, low art kind of dichotomy within the structuring of these films, where you bring in even the murders, like some of them get pretty gross, right?
But there's like a tableau, you know.
But it's like it's so fake. Yeah, it's funny almost. It's funny in the sense that like the blood looks so fake, and you can tell it's more designed to be colorfully correct, right? So and like it doesn't have to look realistic. Realism is not a part of these movies, right? I mean, in the earlier ones and in some of the Fulci ones, they're a little more realistic, right?
Like in Bird with the Crystal Plumage, I think at the end, isn't he pinned down by a statue or a work of art?
Yes, that's right.
Which also happens in Tenebrae at the end.
That's right.
And then in...
And it's usually some kind of classical work of art, right?
Yeah. Or in Suspiria, it becomes a tableau near the beginning when the victim is hung.
Yeah.
And
oh God.
and then all these shards of glass come down.
And then smash into the one woman's like forehead.
Yeah. And it becomes this whole
But it's like,
thing.
there's something artistic even about that shot, right? Like it's horrific. It's just woman's
or the
got
razor
a big
wire in the room because
Yeah,
a ballet school has to have a room full of razor
wire, yeah. Yeah, but that was terrifying, you know, that razor wire thing. And then just the whole kind of like fever dream that Jessica Harper's always under, you know, where she's like seeing hearing these witches. So you never know whether this is all a breakdown of a mental
It's very
breakdown.
psychological.
Yeah, like, and I thought I kind of read it that way, and that's what I was saying to you earlier. It kind of reminded me a little bit more of something like Cries and Whispers or Persona by Bergman and Three Women, which is also like Persona, right?
Right.
But it had that same kind of.
Have you seen Hour of the Wolf?
Yeah, that one's pretty scary actually.
Yeah,
that's a late Bergman. That was kind of like his horror film, I think. Yeah, but you know, just to say, like these are art films. Like they're. What's interesting about them is I didn't find them scary. They're disturbing on some level, obviously, but we're so used to seeing the kind of stuff like, you know, people being murdered in all kinds of different ways, dismembered, you know, whatever, right? So it's not that, but there's such an aesthetic rigorousness to these movies. They are elevated beyond their, you know, sort of B-level sort of status, right? There's some just absolutely gorgeous cinematography, right?
I mean, my favorite Giallo would be Deep Red. I think Deep Red is a total masterpiece, and you know there are sequences in there that are so stunning. Like you know, near the beginning when the two guys are talking, and it's this giant like piazza with this huge statue, and it's like, what is this?
Yeah,
where this location coming from? And then actually, Deep Red scared me a little bit. You know what scene when he goes back to the mansion. And he's chipping away at the wall to try to figure out.
Oh yeah, and he sees the room in there,
skeleton. And he sees those childish drawings are so scary.
Oh yeah,
you know. But we don't want to give too many spoilers here. But
well, again, it always goes back to the family and to the mother. A lot of them do, right? A lot of them have to do with family. Again, some kind of sexual trauma that happened to this killer, right? And the killer, so let's talk a little bit about, you know, let's talk about like a few of the ones that we liked. You said Deep Red was a masterpiece. I agree. Deep Red is a masterpiece. I really like Suspiria. People don't like that one as much, but I really liked it.
Yeah, I love Suspiria.
I thought it was like an acid trip, you know? It's such
a surreal... like even that scene where they're like, because you remember when the maggots come down, that was disgusting.
I love that part though, because it was so like, what the fuck is this? And then it's fruit. Remember,
it makes no sense. Why would? And then so all the girls get sequestered into like this common room, like a gymnasium or something. And then like it's this red color with these sheets. It just makes no sense. And then it's gorgeous.
And then you see the shadow of that main witch,
the head witch.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah,
and makes those noises. I found, and that's the thing. It's like you can head witch, you know, whatever, mother, right?
It's a surrogate family, right?
Totally. It kind of has a bit of that culty quality to it, right?
And a gay subtext as well.
Yes, sure. Absolutely. But so they're just absolutely. Some of them I've seen, like definitely that one. Bird of the Crystal Plumage is absolutely beautiful
Yeah.
as well. Like just stunning, like set pieces, right? Which other one did I see that I really liked? I really liked.
Well, there was Don't Torture a Duckling.
So I saw that one.
Yeah.
That one was not. I still had some of those beautiful set pieces and stuff like that for sure, but it also had more because it's about a village.
Yeah.
It's about a village where there's this. It's much more about superstition. It's about, and actually, I shouldn't say that it's much more about. I think that's another aspect of Giallo that this guy missed. Right? It's philosophically, the movies are deep because what they're really about is, the sort of ancient supernatural, more ignorant, I guess you could say, perceptions of life versus the rational,
Right.
Scientific, investigative, authoritative side of life, right?
And that's why the investigators are so incompetent, because they are missing
they're
the emotional and the psychological and the
exactly like this is stuff that's happening that you can't explain.
It's under the surface, and it's like So Don't Torture a Duckling, there's these children who seem to keep getting murdered. It's quite kind of disturbing, to be honest. It's
pretty disturbing, yeah.
And so, but they start blaming this woman who they think is a witch because she lives with her uncle or something in this like
who's
shack.
like a weird magician type guy. Yeah,
and you think there's something weird with those two anyway.
Yeah.
And then it's a whole police procedural around that. But it is quite creepy.
And it's got that...
Lucio Fulci is the filmmaker who...
He's like the
godfather of gore.
Yeah.
So he made much gorier films.
Yeah, I know. I heard about the one after that where he's like slicing the nipples and the eyeballs and stuff like that. I don't even want to see that one. But yeah, no. But what's really fascinating about that is that, there's this... They're deep. They have this kind of like idea of the supernatural. They're not just saying that it exists. They're saying, does it? They're sort of asking this question: are there? It's like that Shakespeare line, right? There's more things that were dreamed in heaven and earth, right? It's like there are things you really just don't have any explanation for at all, and it may seem like supernatural, but to a certain extent, it's sort of. I'm sorry to do this, but I immediately think of somebody like Trump. Doesn't it seem kind of supernatural? like there's no
some
explanation.
There's some kind of mind control.
Yeah, but
witchcraft happening.
I know, but it's not working on us, right? It's not working on everyone. But it's somehow.
Is it? Maybe. It is.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Wait till Tuesday, November 5th. Azed.
I do want to kill some of my enemies. Maybe that's it. Maybe I am more.
So Deep Red does it really well because it's a lot of giallos try to be rational, but Deep Red goes because one of the first victims is a psychic,
right?
And the psychic is right about so many things, but it could be a coincidence. But you don't really think it is.
Symbolically, it's like they're killing the person who's dealing with the supernatural, right? Yeah. It's like an attempt for rational thinking of the Enlightenment. It's an attempt for the rational to battle against the irrational and often losing, right? And that's sort of the point. I think that's what gives them more meat than their sort of shallow slasher film kind of thing, because they all seem to be about that too. They're about ethics, right? I think that's an Italian thing. They often will bring in a religious component, right? Because it's such a big part of their culture, right?
Well, if you look at Don't Torture a Duckling, it was controversial at the time because it was highly critical of the Catholic Church,
right? Because it's a priest, right?
Well, spoiler alert, but it's the Catholic school that's committing these atrocities,
right? Well, that's it. Like, I mean,
or in what did you do to our daughters, where they're investigating an underground underage girl prostitution ring.
Right.
It turns out that after all of the investigations and solving the crimes, they can't even prosecute because it goes all the way up to ministers of government.
Yeah, right.
And
so in this sense, they're really kind of always dealing with evil, right? And this is a controversial thing about these movies because they get slotted in with male gaze, sort of misogynistic, slasher killing women who look sexy at the same time. And that's all legit. I think you can easily make a case that that's there. And I don't want to you don't want to overspin it, but there is something else going on in these movies too. They aren't merely, slasher films, and they are concerned, at least the ones I've seen, they're concerned with women. They're actually about women, right? And the women in these films are complicated and accomplished, right?
They're professionals.
They're like
intelligent.
And this is in the 70s, and really outspoken and kind of like do their own thing, right?
I mean, I had a lot of problems with what did they do to your daughters. It felt more like just a cop drama and not a particularly great one.
Right.
But the most competent character in the entire film is the assistant district attorney, who's a female who's partnered with the male detective, who's a hothead. And she basically is both, solving the crime, and she's also becomes a potential victim because she gets targeted at one point, and there's a scary sequence where she's being followed in an underground parking garage, and it's this whole thing. And so I thought that was very complicated. Or in Deep Red, where David Hemmings is paired with Dario Nicolodi, who became Argento's wife. Who is this sort of ball-breaking journalist trying to help solve the crime as well. And she's really tough. And there's all these great scenes where she's clearly tougher than he is. She challenges him to an arm wrestling. He's like, women shouldn't do this, women shouldn't do that. And she challenges him on every point.
And she's like instrumental in the whole thing, right? Like figuring the whole thing out, right? He finds the painting, right? The Murder in the Snow that looks like a Bruegel painting, right? And he brings it home, or not the painting, but the print or whatever. And he brings it home and he hangs it up on his wall. And as soon as she comes in, she starts to feel.
Is this Crystal Plumage?
Oh, it's Crystal Plumage.
I know that the tropes are so similar.
She's in that too. That's why. Yeah, right. Yeah, but moving on to Crystal Plumage, then she comes into the room and sees that, and immediately she feels scared. Right. He just puts it up. He doesn't give a shit, right? and like he's not feeling anything. She's feeling it. She's like, there's something about that. Like I don't like it, right? And that goes, it goes into a kind of more, maybe, I guess you could say, a cliched kind of attributes of male female. But I think in some ways it really speaks to that whole how men prize rationality in a way that is not. It's not capable of explaining certain things, like love or feelings or emotions or a lot of things,
or just the mood, or just
the mood, exactly. Like why are you feeling this way right now, right? Or why can a smell make you remember something? That kind of thing. And I think women are a lot more total about that kind of thing. Maybe it's because they give birth. I have no idea, right? But there's a connection to life but
it's a great device in horror too, because
it's about it's also the vilifying of that whole pagan witchy type thing. It's really given a kind of feminist boost, because even though it's in Suspiria, it's killing, whatever, but it's this coven, like you said, of women, right?
And all the men in Suspiria are useless. So you've got two police officers who are in part of one scene that doesn't go anywhere. The police investigation.
Kind of bumbling. Yeah.
You've got a sort of a mute, hulking guy who's just kind of helping them out.
Oh, yeah.
Then there's a blind guy, and then the other one's a kid.
Right.
And then everybody else is this powerful, strong, either a student or a teacher.
Yeah, the men are all kind of castrated, in one way or the other. And then the ultimate castrator is a man who feels he has to murder women for psychosexual reasons, right? Yeah. And but there not to make it too binary, but there is that. These are kind of morality plays in many ways, right? And I think that's what gives it, again, their sort of high and low quality. They're both high art, but also very vulgar and lurid,
But I mean, Suspiria is gorgeous. I mean, Like, do you remember that room with the white flowers?
I'm totally stealing stuff from that next time I shoot anything.
Well, one film that steals totally from Argento is Saw. So Saw, I think, is a good film.
I haven't seen Saw.
To me, Saw is not torture porn. The sequels are in Hostel and all that, but Saw is a very clever, also structured a bit like a Giallo in that these murders are happening, or these strange deaths, and so two cops, one of whom is Danny Glover, are investigating what's happening. And if you remember in Saw, there's a whole razor wire scene where this guy is forced to crawl through razor wire, which happens in Suspiria.
You're right.
And of course, we all know what Jigsaw is in Saw, the Saw movies, all of them.
Yeah.
He comes up as a little puppet.
Yeah.
Who rolls
Laura
in.
Loomer. Yeah.
Rolls in and says, "I want to play a game," which is stolen completely from Deep Red. When the puppet comes out.
Oh yeah.
To the guy who was working with the psychic. And it's this whole elaborate sequence where all that puppet is a distraction for the killer who's hiding behind the curtain.
Oh, that's right.
To kill the guy in a horrific way. He's like bashing his face into the corner of the fireplace in the table so his teeth come out.
I know. They love to do that kind of like chunks of shit
teeth
coming out.
Teeth and eyes and like all that. Fulci loved screwing up with people's eyes.
Well, Fulci's like that. The scariest part of the most like creepy part was the ending of Don't Torture a Duckling.
Yeah.
With the priest falling off the cliff.
Oh yeah.
And his face just getting like torn apart.
Yeah. On the side.
That was, and with that, and it's with that syrupy music, and he's got the memories, and it's a really, it's both like disturbing and funny in a weird way because it looks pretty fake, but it's also really horrific and scary.
Yeah.
And sad at the same time.
I watched another Fulci film called The Beyond, which was made in the early 80s, and it's like a full-on zombie haunted house horror movie. It's not Giallo at all, but I mean, similarly, there's like people getting like hit with horrible things that are just chopping up their bodies, and their eyes get gouged out constantly. And it's
he's got a thing with the eyes, I think.
This whole weird thing.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see some more of the Fulci movies for sure. Would you say like that this is a popular genre right now with people? Because I don't think many people have heard of it.
Yeah, I think I deal with a lot of film festivals in my work, and a lot of them are like genre festivals. People like who do Midnight Madness, the programmers of Midnight Madness.
They know that.
And
stuff,
and they are all into this stuff. But no, I mean, I don't think Giallo is as,
It never really broke through to the...
Not today, no.
Not like, not the way like horror movies, like big horror movies do here, right?
Well, not like the big, I guess it's the big Hollywood horror films from the 70s that seem to have so much resonance, like Rosemary's Baby or The Exorcist or The Omen.
I think the Rosemary's Baby is the 60s.
The 60s, yeah.
But, I think also like, like even the slasher films, like the lesser quality movies, they're so popular, right? What's amazing is that when you see movies from another culture and what their horror is, right? It's both relatable, right? Because it's like with Giallo especially, it's like, okay, well, this is like every movie that we see here, right? But much tamer and without the art, and but the thing is, it's interesting. It does say something about the culture, what they're interested in. Like, for example, I heard that they won't. My friend Simon told me this, that in I think it's China. He said in China they won't take any ghost stories, right? Because they don't believe in ghosts.
In Japan, it's all ghost stories.
Yeah, in Japan it's all ghost stories.
Yeah,
and but in China they won't.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
because Japanese horror is a whole other thing.
Well, Japanese horror is
unbelievable,
equally odd and great, right? Yeah, like Onibaba and
Karaneko. Do you know that one?
Or there's that one that's kind of big, a little bit like God Told Me to too. It's like it's more recent, like 80s or something. What's it called? What everyone's like people are being compelled to murder.
Is that Cure?
Cure. That's it.
I haven't seen Cure.
Cure is really good.
Yeah.
And there's House. House is amazing.
House is great.
House is like Giallo a little bit.
Yeah.
In that it's got that cartoony, almost like over the top set design, and
Well, wait till you see Audition, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I told Tom me and Ishmael are gonna watch Audition tomorrow night on Halloween, and he's telling me he's making me scared.
You should be scared.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I won't watch.
Yeah, you gotta watch it.
I don't know.
But yeah, going all the way back to like Quite On from the 60s, a Japanese anthology horror series. Which,
right.
If you watch it, is totally where stuff like The Ring comes from.
Right.
And other Japanese stories.
Yeah. Well, it's like we just rewatched the original Wicker Man.
Oh, I rewatched that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so good. I loved it.
It's great.
I love it. It's so good.
It's one for those who haven't seen The Wicker Man. Imagine you're watching a movie and you have no idea what the fuck you're watching because it's like, is this a drama? Is this a comedy?
Yeah.
Is this a musical? What the hell is this? And then the last half hour is the most terrifying thing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
And that's what Hereditary was basically all. Not Hereditary.
Midsommar was borrowed a lot from it.
Yeah, a lot. So, and again, similar kind of theme, right? That's why I have a feeling that Giallo was probably much bigger with filmmakers, right?
Oh, yeah.
Of the day,
I mean, Giallo stuff gets screened at like rep cinemas all the time. Like Suspiria always
it's always Suspiria
in October. Like all these rep cinemas are showing Suspiria, maybe Deep Red. But yeah, they're not showing like the,
I think people tend to. I don't know about this because I just sort of started getting into it, but I think people might tend to feel like with horror, and this is a problem with horror. I think in general is that there's a kind of empty calories kind of quality to them, right? It's like it's just for the shocks and whatever, and the cheesiness is part of it. And it doesn't have to be a good story and whatever. It's all about the murders and whatever, right?
The
gore, and how innovative was the kill and all that stuff, right? Which is all cool. I get that, but these are better movies than that. Like they're actually solid films on their own because they play a lot with cinema language in a way that I think is really lost these days, right?
Yeah,
like. People were doing that a lot in the 70s, in the 60s, 70s. There was more of a balance between the story and the form, right?
Yeah. I mean, another good, masterful horror film, which I think is probably influenced by Giallo, was Nicholas Roeg's Don't Look Now.
Oh yeah, that I thought of the exact same thing. Yeah,
and you've got this, and it's like you're in the setting of Venice that you can smell off the screen. It's like rotting, and then there's this figure in his red trench coat, and
which is like same as the daughter who died.
Horrific scene at the beginning of the film. Yeah, I mean,
and it's got that same kind of like it's got that same kind of blood in it too, where it's like it doesn't look spurting real, but it's like it's worse in some way.
It totally is worse. Yeah,
it's more colorful or something. But yeah, no, I thought of Don't Look Now as well. There's that, and again, that's also a movie about the rational architect versus the psychic sisters.
Yeah, and
Julie Christie.
Julie Christie's character, who's more attuned to
the two sisters, right? The one blind, right? Also a kind of coven of women at the end, right?
That's true.
Yeah, it's. I think that was the whole thing because I think there was it's just a speculation, but it ties into my Exorcist concept too, which is that you have to remember at that point in time, like the way you see like MAGA idiots today, like being so scared of like communism, right? That's the way people
Snowflakes.
were. Yeah, people were scared of feminism.
Yeah.
Right. They thought our women are out of control, right?
I mean, these MAGA types are
but they were always the ones in charge, right?
Yeah.
Like they were like, lesser. Some were better, like Jimmy Carter. But I'm just saying in American politics, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so these movies are, whether consciously or not, but a lot of these horror movies are reflecting that fear of women banding together. Because first of all, I think most misogyny comes from my theory is that a lot of misogyny anyway comes from envy and fear. Okay, so what is it that we fear about women? They give birth, right? Men are alienated from that process unless you're a trans man,
Sure.
right? But men are alienated from that process, and I think that there's a quality to women that seems supernatural, and which is why they get accused of being witches and whatever. And when women get together in groups, there's this sense that there's power there, right? And there's a fear of what women know that men don't, right?
Yeah, well, this is why I love horror films so much, because I think in a genre space you can sneak in all this messaging that if you made it explicit in a dramatic film of some kind, it would just feel pedantic or
wrong.
You know. But like think about even like more recent horror films that touch on exactly what you're talking about, like The Blair Witch Project,
Right.
which I think is also a masterpiece.
Just rewatched that recently as well.
And where the director is a woman. And the things that the two men say as they all go crazy together, lost in the woods, are just so much misogyny going on.
Not
and
only
she's
that,
like
but
this victim, even though she's also kind of creating.
She's
problem.
positioned as an unlikable character, like she's annoying. But an interesting read of the film is, if you take all the supernatural out of it, right? So this is a rational kind of way of explaining it. It's the two guys who kind of lured her into the woods to kill her, and they basically just did all that stuff because they wanted to make the movie. They wanted to have that movie.
The whole film could be that.
Could be that, right? And it makes sense because why does he throw the map? Why does he throw the map away?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Why does the guy take off in the middle of the night and then they can hear him in this house?
But then they hear him screaming.
Yeah. And you never see them together at the same time.
Yeah, and the other guy's a sound guy, so like all the sounds could be
exactly.
Yeah. So there's always a kind of
or Paranormal Activity, which is a better movie than you would think. It's actually I thought it was quite good. Have you seen it?
Is it the one about the couple?
Yeah, the couple and the...
No, that was awful.
It's basically...
It's the ghost hunters, basically, right?
Well, it's a young couple.
Right.
And there's a ghost in the house.
Yeah.
But it turns out the ghost is attached to her.
Right.
And so they can't get away from it. And the guy is all super rational about it and all this stuff. And it's all like a found footage kind of movie.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was good. Not great, but, but it touched on all those things as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, like that's the thing. Like we're looking at Giallo today because I think it's an overlooked genre. I mean, film people will know it, but I think every day, like just regular people who like movies, would really get a kick out of some of these movies. I mean, they're really they're creepy as fuck. They're good for Halloween. They're not too over the top. Nuts, like they don't disturb your head like Funny Games or something, or I'm sure the way Audition is going to.
And they're not like they're gory, but they're not. But it's not. It's kind of cartoonish.
Yeah, it's doable, right?
And it's not scary. They're not scary. I
Yeah.
mean, there's certainly I found bits of Deep Red and Suspiria extremely creepy.
Definitely, there's like in I can't remember which one it
she's
was.
Lying there with those pins in her eyes.
Yeah,
oh
that's gross. Yeah. But there's one where I think it's Don't Torture a Duckling, where they torture the witch, the woman they think is the witch, and they're using chains. And every time they hit her with a chain, he does a close up of
zoom
of like her skin just splitting open, right, and like the flesh coming out.
Fulci does that again in The Beyond.
Yeah,
right at the beginning,
they
opening
love
scene.
That. They love the
some
meat.
guy gets chained.
They love the meat coming right out.
Flaying,
a lot of flaying.
A lot of flaying.
Yeah, crazy Italians.
But
everything's got to do with cooking, right? So I mean, well, anyway, I mean, I think, listen, if you're gonna watch something over this Halloween season, which I kind of think is like all of October, maybe the first week of November. Yeah.
Or if you're like me, you watched horror movies constantly 12 months of the year.
Right.
Although,
again, should you be really confessing your illnesses?
The problem is most horror movies are bad. right? And
That's it.
My son Eli loves horror movies, so we go see stuff. And, you know, like one of the most acclaimed horror films of the year was Longlegs.
Yeah, I heard about that.
No,
No?
didn't work for me at all. Or Eli.
But do you understand why it was popular?
I do.
Why?
Well, Nicolas Cage for one thing.
Oh, right.
Right, and Nicolas Cage is great in it.
When is he not?
I know he's almost unrecognizable, and he's sort of subtle in a weird way. Like he's an over the top killer, but he's great. And there's a lot of stylistic chances that the filmmakers take, and some of them work and some of them don't.
Right.
But there's a lot of fundamental things about the film.
Well, I'll just to go back to what I was saying about the form, right? What you're saying now is like, yeah, I think filmmakers today are very savvy. They know cinema, right? They know what to steal from, right? Or what to have an homage to. But the issue is that it's very gimmicky the way it's done these days, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have the authentic formal experimentation that those older films
No, it just rips them off, or
it kind of
like
rips them off.
a very surface
It's like
homage.
it's like the way the jump cut became like popularized by MTV, right? Before that, it was Godard, right? And that was a formal like experiment where it was like, you're not supposed to do that, right? That's a mistake, right? So yeah, it's like things that like experimental tropes get played out a lot in today's cinema. I don't see a lot. I mean, there are some filmmakers out there who are doing very original work, right? In horror, I don't know who that would be right now. I guess you would say Ari Aster, but his stuff is pretty derivative. Like, it's great, but like Midsummer is just Wicker Man, right?
No, I disagree. I think Midsummer.
It's the same movie.
No, it's not
has
the same movie
ending.
at all. No, it's not the same movie at all.
I think it's
it borrows a lot from it, for sure.
The one thing it doesn't have
Hereditary is very original. There's nothing like Hereditary.
Yeah, Hereditary is, yes, I would agree. That one's pretty original, although it does have sort of things that it borrows again from like the Amityville horror type thing.
There's a lot of interesting things going on in that film. Those are
that,
two of the better horror films.
I think that's and I love both of those movies. I'm just saying that Midsummer to me is very much a 70s throwback, because there was a lot of movies about cults back then. Yeah. Even Manson, cults, that whole thing,
Ticket
right?
to Heaven.
Ticket to Heaven, Nick Mancuso, yeah. That's a good movie, actually.
It is a good movie.
Yeah.
But there's one other one I saw recently, not really scary, more just unsettling, by a trans filmmaker called I Saw the TV Glow.
Oh, I heard about that one, too.
Yeah, check that out.
I heard
that's
good.
got a lot of cool things happening, and it's certainly a visionary filmmaker.
Okay, now before we end, I'm just gonna say that we should try to think of 2 or 3 films that are not The Exorcist that scared you to the point where when you went to bed, you had to like carry a knife with you or something.
Yeah, I could think of 2 that aren't even horror films that did that to me.
Okay.
One is called Deliverance.
You were afraid of the anal rape
out of me
in your like downtown.
Oh, that
home?
last shot, the second last shot, where the hand comes up out of the water. Oh my god! I remember when first of all, I was way too young when I watched that.
Right.
And I watched it with my parents, so thanks, Mom and Dad.
Yeah.
And
it was a different time.
They let me watch anything.
Yeah, my parents too.
And I went to bed that night, and I closed my eyes, and all I could see was that hand coming up out of the water.
Oh, poor Tom.
And then the other one was a BBC film called Threads. Do you remember this?
Mm-mm.
Oh my God, you have to watch this movie. So Threads is a almost documentary-like depiction of what would happen in a nuclear attack on London.
Oh, I've heard of Threads. Yeah. I haven't seen it. Yeah.
That I could not sleep that night.
Okay. So
again, and also another terrifying last shot. Okay. And they're not horror films; they're just horrific movies about, But I'm trying to think of any other films. The Conjuring scared me, which is pretty recent.
Who was that again?
Conjuring is Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, and Lily Taylor's in it.
Oh, it's a remake, right?
No, it's not. It's a based on a true story about two married paranormal investigators in the 70s, and they investigate this haunted house with this family.
I've seen that one.
Yeah, that scared the crap out of me.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, this scared me so much, and I'd show it to people, and they'd be like, "Well, this is so scary."
I don't think that one's scary.
I told my parents, and they're like, "That's not scary."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I couldn't sleep for 2 nights.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Okay.
well, go figure.
You know what
You?
one? Yeah, there are two that are really kind of not really well known. I don't think. Well, they're well known, but neither of them are great. But they scared me. One was Session 9.
Oh yeah.
Ew.
Is that the one set in the
In an insane asylum. They're cleaning it up.
Yeah, that's creepy. That was a fucking creepy movie.
That one scared me. I was like, this got into my bones.
If there's like an insane asylum part of a horror film, that's
Well, this one was really well done too, because it's all that main guy, and he finds those tapes of those sessions, right? And
yeah, it's that great actor with Peter Mullen.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
he's sort of It's like he's implicated in it. It's very creepy. And then the other one I saw that really scared me was Event Horizon.
Yeah,
That one
that's a good movie.
That one was so creepy. Well, it's based on Solaris, right?
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
Solaris.
But it's like a horror version of Solaris.
But it's
right?
it's like a hack director, but he just pulled off this really good.
Yeah, I remember. It was so fucking scary, right? Like he really So those have been a few where I've where after the movie's over, I've kind of been like,
It even gets kind of like it gets super dark. It's like this other world is like a BDSM kind of like weird Hellraiser kind of situation.
Yeah, it gets really because it's all about their fantasies, kind of. This, it's like that same Solaris thing, like the planet, the Event Horizon can read or knows what your fantasies are and projects them or whatever, right?
Solaris is incredible.
What am I?
The Tarkovsky, by the way, folks, do not watch the Soderbergh.
Well, yeah, that is awful.
That's awful, terrible.
I don't know if I'd say awful, but
No, I hated it.
I hated it. Okay. I know some people who like it.
A lot of people liked it. I think it got good reviews and everything.
Yeah,
I
no,
just couldn't
but
stand
when
it.
I've seen the original Solaris like 5 times. Like I love Solaris. I actually might like it even a little bit better than Stalker, because everybody loves Stalker, I love Stalker.
I've never even seen Stalker. It's like a huge hole in my.
Leave the house.
I know.
Okay, that's the next movie we're gonna watch together.
Okay.
I love Stalker.
I can't wait to see it.
And those are a little bit on the creepy side in a weird way too. They like some of those Tarkovsky movies or Bellatar or who else is like that?
There's some like
even those Roy Anderson movies like those Songs from the Second Floor. They can have a kind of like an uncanny kind of creepy dark quality.
Scary non-horror movies like David Lynch is a lot of that.
Yeah, well, David Lynch, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess you could call Eraserhead kind of a horror movie.
yeah, I remember, we'll end on this, I guess. I remember seeing David Lynch on some talk show, probably Johnny Carson, and whoever asked him, like, I heard that your mother went to go see Eraserhead, right? And this was like years after it had come out, right? And what did she think? And she said to him, David, that's not a very pleasant nightmare to sit through. I was like, yeah.
Amazing film. All right.
I think on that note,
it.
go watch Giallo.
Very quickly, if you're going to watch Giallo, you want to see Blood and Black Lace.
Bird in the crystal plumage.
The bird with the crystal plumage.
Bird with the crystal plumage. Deep Red.
Don't Torture a Duckling.
And Suspiria and Tenebrae. Right?
Yeah, I think that...
there's a few I haven't seen.
There's a lot of other ones, but those are the main, most well-known.
Yeah, if you have Criterion Channel, they have them all on there. If not, would you just do some work and find those movies?
Oh, do what I did and buy the 4K Deep Red. I mean, nothing looked better.
Right. Well, there's not that many nerds out there.
And with
Not
that,
filmers.
we will see you out there in the dark.
You're a nerd.